All right, so for the past few weeks, I've been putting the cameras on the S25 Ultra to the test up against the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and the OnePlus 13 to see which one takes the best photos and videos. Definitely a lot to unpack, so let's talk about it. All right, with the S25 Ultra, you might be tempted to use the 200 megapixel mode. Just know it comes with some drawbacks. For one, it takes a lot longer to take and process each photo. So if you're capturing any sort of fast action, it's not really usable. Also, it impacts the dynamic range and it limits you to the main sensor. You can't use the ultra-wide or any of the telephoto cameras. It does give you more detail and resolution, but unless you plan on excessively cropping your photos, there's really no benefit, at least in my opinion. You're better off with the 50 megapixel or even the 12 megapixel mode. Aside from that, the first thing I always consider is just the colors. Samsung has always been punchier as far as colors. They usually give you more saturation, so you'll notice things like bluer skies and greener grass. The other thing I always consider is dynamic range. I always kind of felt like iPhone has carried the torch as far as dynamic range, but it seems like Samsung has made up some ground. When it comes to harsh lighting conditions with direct sunlight, in most cases, I prefer the look of the S25 Ultra. I think it handles the exposure quite well, and then again, you get those punchier colors. Now let's switch gears and look at some portrait mode examples. Honestly, it really just comes down to personal preference. I think they all do a great job in most cases, but if I had to choose one, personally, I would go with the S25 Ultra just because I feel like the way it handles the colors is the most consistent, even in different lighting conditions. Aside from that, the other thing to consider is edge detection. In this example, I think iPhone handles it the best. To me, it looks the most natural, especially with the fine details of the hair, which can be tricky. With the S25 Ultra, there's more of that artificial cutout effect. Moving over to cinematic mode and the equivalent across the other three phones, the first thing I noticed is the OnePlus 13 struggled with focus when I wasn't within a few feet of the camera. You'll see it momentarily as I start to walk away. Aside from that, the main takeaway is that the S25 Ultra and the iPhone are able to stay in 4K when using these modes, whereas the Pixel and the OnePlus downgrade to 1080p. Now, like I said earlier, when it comes to dynamic range, in the past, I felt like iPhone carried the torch, and when it comes to the front-facing cameras in particular, I do think that's still the case. As you can see here, we have a situation with the sun directly behind me, and I feel like iPhone handles it the best. The contrast, the balance of the colors, there's just less of that faded, washed out look. Here we have another example, just for good measure, the exact same type of shot. As you can see, sun is directly behind me, and if I had to pick one, personally, I would go with the iPhone. I think the playing field is a lot more level and a more ideal lighting situation with the sun in front of me instead of behind me. Aside from some differences in exposure and color, I think they all look fairly decent. From there, let's get into some ultra-wide examples. With the S25 Ultra, you have that new 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera. You just have to remember to switch things over to 50 megapixel mode, and when you do, you're able to retain an impressive amount of detail. And I actually feel like the OnePlus 13 and the S25 Ultra might retain the most detail out of all four phones in ultra-wide mode. Now, as far as video, the ultra-wide camera on the OnePlus 13 is not nearly as wide as the other three. However, it does seem to have the sharpest looking image. Now, I gotta warn my S25 Ultra users real quick. Something you absolutely need when you're out taking photos and videos is a high quality case. Believe it or not, in the process of creating this video, I dropped my brand new S25 Ultra and cracked the ultra wide camera. Thank God for insurance, but I could have saved myself a deductible and a headache had I used something like this elite case from Magbak. This is easily one of the most premium cases I've ever checked out. It comes with a screen protector that's foolproof to install. It provides excellent drop protection without adding unnecessary size. It's fully MagSafe and wireless charging compatible. And speaking of the MagSafe compatibility, this thing has some of the strongest magnets you'll find on any case. You can mount this thing just about anywhere. There's also a built-in finger loop for those that just can't seem to keep their phone in their hand. You've got a pinky pillow for a more comfortable user experience, and when you're at your desk just hanging out watching videos, you've got a built-in kickstand. You can even add your own personal touch with customizable grips and buttons. Pair the case with some Magbak accessories like this Napa leather magnetic wallet, and you're pretty much good to go. I've tried out a few cases so far, including this pretty basic Samsung case, and after checking out the Magbak Elite, let's just say the Samsung case is getting replaced. Be sure to check out the link in the description to get yours and use the code on the screen to get 15% off. Now, as far as telephoto shots, the S25 Ultra and the OnePlus 13 have a 3x optical camera. The optical zoom on the iPhone and the Pixel don't kick in until 5x. So at 3x, they're forced to crop in on the main sensor. Between the S25 Ultra and the OnePlus 13, I actually think the OnePlus 13 produces the better images. The detail and the contrast is just a bit more pleasing to the eye. Just like the iPhone and the Pixel, the S25 Ultra has a 5x optical zoom in addition to its 3x optical zoom, and at this range, I think they all stack up pretty well. Even the 5x crop on the OnePlus 13 looks pretty good. Now, the total zoom range on the iPhone is 25 times and the total zoom on the Pixel is 30 times, and when you zoom in that far, I think they all look really good except the iPhone. For whatever reason, you tend to get a lot of noise and it just doesn't look as good as the other three. With the OnePlus 13, you can definitely tell it's doing a lot of post-processing, a lot of noise reduction, a lot of sharpening, things of that nature. But in my opinion, it still looks better than the iPhone. As far as the total zoom range on the S25 Ultra and the OnePlus 13, you have 100 and 120 times digital zoom respectively. And when you zoom in that far, neither one of them is perfect, but I do think the S25 Ultra holds things together a little bit better. When it comes to video, the iPhone tops out at 15 times zoom. The other three actually have more reach, but just to keep a level playing field, I kept those at 15 times zoom as well. And out of the group, if I had to choose one in this situation, I would choose the S25 Ultra. I think it gives you the best detail and resolution. From there, let's get into some low light examples. You do have to remember, these are cell phones with very small sensors, so anytime you're short on light, you are going to deal with noise here and there. It just comes with the territory. Now, one thing I've noticed in particular, when it comes to outdoor shots with very bright lights, especially colorful neon type lights, OnePlus tends to expose for those situations the best. I would say the S25 Ultra comes in a very close second. As you can see in these examples, the OnePlus and the S25 Ultra do a great job of exposing for those neon signs. Now, moving over to some video examples, again, you're going to deal with noise in low light situations. It just is what it is. I don't think one particular phone has a definitive advantage, at least when it comes to the rear cameras. Now, when it comes to the front-facing cameras, you will notice some differences as far as how they handle the noise. In this example, I do prefer the colors and the exposure of the Pixel, and that's probably the one I would pick just based on that. Now, when it comes to slow motion, this one's pretty cut and dry. The S25 Ultra and the iPhone offer 4K at 120 frames a second, which is going to give you noticeably more detail compared to the 1080p of the Pixel and the OnePlus 13. Something else worth mentioning is that all of the phones except the OnePlus 13 capture audio when recording in slow motion. When it comes to stabilization, honestly, I think the Pixel has the smoothest looking footage, but if I had to pick one based on image quality and smooth footage, that's where I would give the advantage to the iPhone. Even though the OnePlus 13 is able to record in 4K, I still think the iPhone has the better looking colors and contrast. And then there's 8K footage, which is available on all the phones except for the iPhone. The S25 Ultra and the OnePlus 13 are able to record 8K internally, whereas the Pixel uses its video boost feature, which requires connection to Wi-Fi, and it basically upscales your video into 8K after being recorded. Not my preferred method, but it works. I'm not really somebody that uses 8K a whole lot, but it can be cool to experiment with. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to consider when it comes to comparing the camera capabilities of these phones, but at least on a very surface level, this is what you can expect. It took me a very long time to put this video together. If you could, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up. Also consider subscribing to the channel. And aside from that, I appreciate you guys as always, and I'll see you in the next one.